One of the interesting questions in the Gospels is whether Jesus ever claims to be divine. And there are certainly passages where he alludes to that. It could be construed as a divine claim. But no, I think the simple answer is that Jesus never comes right out and says that. The Gospel writers, however, I think are a lot more clear in their conviction that Jesus is uniquely divine. And this week we looked at one of those passages in Mark, where I think the Gospel writer is very clearly setting up a scenario to lead you to the conclusion that Jesus is more than just a great teacher, maybe even more than just a Messiah, that Jesus is the Son of God in a very literal way. So later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them, and so shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the water. He was about to pass by them. That's weird, right? I mean, here's Jesus, presumably still up on the mountainside so that he can see down toward the lake and notice his friends straining at the oars, and I think the first half is supposed to be kind of reassuring, right? This is presenting Jesus in the frame of God as Father, looking down on us, paying attention, noticing our struggle and attending to it. That's nice. Except next, he comes down, walks out on the water, impressive toward his friends, and was about to pass them by. And there's a few different attempts at explaining this. The first is to shift to the perspective of the disciples. So what Mark is really trying to say here is that the disciples, who, remember, think this is a ghost at the time, believe the ghost was intending to pass them by. And that's actually the perspective that we're reading here in the NIV. Because he was about to pass by them is already quite soft. More literally, what the Greek says here is that Jesus wanted to pass by them. And so by moving away from the more literal, he wanted to pass by them, what the translators are hoping is that you will read this as the disciples thinking he was going to pass by, even though Jesus always intended to stop and help his friends. And that's okay. There is a way you can get there in Greek, no foul play. I will note, however, that there is no parallel usage anywhere else in the New Testament. This is what we call an auxiliary verb with future force. It shows up nowhere else in the New Testament. So already we're in the weeds here trying to massage this the way that we want. Here's the second approach. This one takes the initial conjunction kai as explicative rather than coordinating. And you don't need to understand that, but you do need to know that in the end what you end up with is he wanted to pass by their way. So he wanted to go to them rather than he wanted to go past them. And again, I absolutely think that is closer. In fact, I think that is exactly what Jesus intended to do, but I still don't think it's quite what Mark is trying to get at by using this phrase. Because personally, when I look at this whole story, it becomes very clear to me that what Mark is trying to present here is what we call a theophany. Another way to say that is an appearance of the divine. Now, some 2,000 years later, as Christians, we see every appearance of Jesus as a theophany. Right? Jesus is divine. Jesus is us seeing God, and therefore, by definition, every time we look at Jesus, we see God. But in the Gospels, humanity, us as readers, we are uncovering that reality in real time. And so when we get are these moments where the hiddenness of God penetrates the disciples' experience of the world. And they move one step closer toward the realization of exactly who it is that they are sharing lunch with every day. And this is meant to be one of those moments. You see, the language of passing by is not about Jesus ignoring his friends. This is not an image of Jesus ignoring them. This is an image of divine self-revelation. Mark has lifted these words very explicitly from Exodus 33.
And the Lord said, I will cause my goodness to pass by in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord I am, in your presence. Or perhaps 1 Kings 19, the Lord said, go and stand in the mountain in the presence of the Lord, and the Lord is about to pass by. And a great and powerful wind tore the mountains and shattered the rocks, but the Lord was in the gentle whisper. Or maybe he even has in mind Job 9, God alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea. When he passes by me, I cannot see him. When he goes by, I cannot perceive. And just those three examples of God passing by, we have God's name, I am. We have a great and powerful wind. We have one who treads on the waves of the sea. And to me, that is too much to be just a coincidence. This phrase is more than just an indication of Jesus' traversal plans. This is a callback Mark is making to the Jewish imagination of God. And again, I think this is something that Mark wants to hint at, rather than come out and name for you. There's this motif, particularly in the Gospel of Mark, that we call the messianic secret. We talked about this in the fall because we've already encountered a couple examples of it. He drove out many demons, but he would not let them speak because they knew who he was, Mark 1:34. Or Jesus sent the man away healed with a warning, see that you don't tell anyone about this, Mark 1:43. He took her by the hand and he said, Talitha cum, which meant, little girl, get up. And she did, but he gave strict orders to everyone there not to let anyone know about this, Mark 5:41. There's more. Mark 7:24, he entered a house, but he didn't want anyone to know about it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. Or Mark 7:35, this time the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosed. He began to speak plainly, but Jesus commanded him, don't tell anyone about this. All of these moments, they will build to Mark 8, where we'll get in a few weeks, where Jesus will ask his friends who they think he is, and Peter will be the first to put word to his hope. You are the Messiah. But here, to position Jesus on the mountainside, looking down and seeing his friends struggle, and then for him to come down, walk on the waves, pass by, through the wind, only to be thought a ghost, and then to answer them, take courage, it is I, do not be afraid, or more literally, just 5 words in Greek. Courage, I am, no fear. I think it starts to become clear what Mark is actually trying to do here. Because if you're familiar with those Hebrew scriptures and stories, you'll recognize that middle phrase. In Greek, it's ego eimi. But that is the Septuagint translation of the answer God gives when Moses asks the divine name way back in Exodus, I am that I am. Now, to be fair, scholars will debate here because ego eimi is also a very legitimate Greek phrase that one might use to introduce themselves. Hello, it is I. They had a flair for the dramatic back then. But I think with Jesus looking down from his Olympus and then moving through the raging wind, walking upon the roiling waves, when his goodness passes by, it becomes clear what Mark has in mind as he narrates this moment for us. This is an opportunity for the disciples to see what has thus far been hidden. That God is with God's people, that the divine is so much closer than you think. And understand here, this moment is literary. It's been constructed not just for the disciples who lived it, but it's been crafted, curated for us as readers to experience that realization for ourselves, that God is closer than we think even right now.
All right, thanks for clicking on that link and for watching through to the end. If you're intrigued by the work that we're doing here at Commons, you can do a few things. You can like this video, you can comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can subscribe to our channel here to stay up to date with all of the things that we are doing and posting here online. We're really appreciative of the fact that you're here. If you'd love to dive more into the conversation, you can join our Discord server, where the community is having different conversations about all the ways that we follow the way of Jesus in the world. Have a great week. Hope you're doing well. We'll see you back here next time we post.